Well, hello. In this video, we are going to be talking to you guys about what to expect during your NICU stay. And I do want to preface this by saying that obviously all NICU stays are going to be different. There's going to be, different lengths of stay, different levels of complications that your baby may have, and different hospitals, different policies, all that stuff. So we're going to be speaking to you in somewhat generalities, a little bit, in our specific situation as well, but knowing that obviously there may be some differences for you in your journey. But starting out with kind of just, what to expect in the very beginning. And we may be catching you already midway through your journey. Maybe we're catching you on the front end and you're expecting a NICU stay. Maybe you literally are 2 days in and your life's in a whirlwind. We're not sure where we're catching you in your journey, but we just want to talk a little bit about kind of just, that very beginning phase. And this is obviously going to be a whirlwind for you. Giving birth, typically a lot of times in a NICU situation, it's an emergency C-section or an unexpected, premature birth. Maybe it's something that you were expecting, but either way, your emotions are in a whirlwind. Your baby, is typically taken very quickly down to the NICU and you're left, wondering what's going on. And so I just encourage you at this point in time to lean into God, to really, try your best. I know it's not easy to give it to Him, to really lean into prayer and to trusting that your baby is in the hands of God, but also in the hands of medical professionals who are very skilled and know what they're doing.
Absolutely. I know for both sides, for the mom and the dad, this could be a very emotional part. And some of the things we had to slow down. There's some technical parts, things that will help you along in your journey. And a lot of us understanding some of the medical jargon they're talking about, like what is a Brady? I mean, there's all kinds of things like that. And what you'll find on the website, there's a reference page where you can see some of these terms and learning what they really are. And that'll help you out too when you hear doctors and the nurses speaking about things, you know what they're talking about. Understand the system there of when the nurses are coming in and the different shift changes, because that's when you can hear the update from the day. That's one thing that we did a lot is when the nurses were doing their shift change, we wanted to make sure we were there because we get a full update from the morning shift to the night shift of what was going on. Knowing when the doctors do their rounds, they do their rounds, and sometimes it might tell you they start at 9 o'clock, but they may not get to your room till 10:30, depending on which way they go and how they do things. We want to be there for rounds as well, because then we're getting fresh, up-to-date information from a medical professional. They have camera login systems where when you're not there, because you're not going to be there 24 hours a day, and it's okay, you don't need to feel guilty if you do leave for a little bit. That's one of the hardest things for parents is that you can leave, that there is someone there who's going to take care of them. And we could talk about that at a different time. But for us is that there's a camera login system where we could look at the middle of the night. If we woke up and we were having a hard time sleeping, we could log in and see that our baby was doing just great. So make sure you have access to all that information. We did call-in updates as well. Right before we would go to bed at night, we would call in, get the update, making sure we knew when the weigh-in times were, all that kind of stuff. We wanted to make sure we were on top of that, because that's what mattered the most, is to make sure that we saw the progression that our baby was making.
Another thing to keep in mind as you've kind of, maybe adjusted in your first few weeks, and now you're kind of getting to the point where you're settling in. And this is the point where a lot of times it's 2 steps forward, 1 step back. And I remember them telling us that in the beginning, and, the emotional roller coaster is kind of setting in, because you are seeing progress probably. You're seeing, weight gain and things like that. But then it's like you come in one day and they've lost weight, or, there's some sort of regression. Maybe, if your baby's on oxygen, ours was on oxygen the entire time. And sometimes the setting, we had to bump their oxygen back up after having maybe a couple of days where they had come down on their oxygen. Things like that, it's a huge emotional roller coaster. You're starting to feel like, things are going really well. And then it's like, boom, something happens. And it's a minor setback. And they would always tell us, like, this is normal. This is normal. This is to be expected. But it didn't feel normal to us, right? And so understand that, unfortunately, that is part of the process, that there is going to be a lot of, 2 steps forward and 1 step back. There is going to be, lots of victories and then things that feel like a setback. But understand that, again, depending on your baby's level of prematurity, they're still supposed to be in the womb at this point, growing and developing. And they're on the outside, and this is not the normal way, obviously, for babies to develop. So it is going to be a different journey. And so that was a big thing for me. And this time I started to get kind of antsy. I started to really try to press timelines like, okay, well, when will he be doing this? When will he be able to do this? When will he be able to wear clothes? When will he be able to come off the CPAP? And I would just constantly like press a timeline. And they would always just say like, we just take it one day at a time. I don't want to give you a prediction. They would like never give me any predictions because they just were like, we don't know. Some babies progress at different rates, and we can give you like a general expectation, but you just don't know. And so that's a big thing, is try not to, I know all these things are easier said than done. We've lived all of this, but try not to press timelines so much. Your baby will grow and develop as they need. And what's going to be best for them, and the nurses and the doctors, they do know what's best. I will say too, to advocate for your baby. There are times where we question some things and we push the envelope on a few things because that's what we felt strongly about. And so I do encourage you to ask questions, to advocate for your baby, and to maybe, seek additional resources, because you, at the end of the day, you're the parent, and that's hard because you're in this, situation where you honestly don't feel like you're the parent. You feel like, sometimes you're just like visiting this baby, and they're in the hands of other people, and like those people are in control. That's not the case. You are still the parent. You may not feel in control, but you're still the parent. So speak up, ask questions, advocate for your baby. Lean into God, obviously, in this portion, because it can get weary. It can get very weary, to back and forth to the NICU, day after day after day after day after day. Our journey was 85 days, and in the middle of that, it felt like this is never going to end. And so, leaning into God, really trusting, really praying, but trying as best you can to genuinely just take it one day at a time, and not put your hopes so much on a time frame, because that is where, honestly, I got crushed a few times, because I had my hopes so set on these timelines, and when that didn't happen, it was really hard for me. So
So after this process, 2 steps forward and 1 step back, you're now preparing to go home. And during this time, one of the things that I made a big mistake was, one of the first things the doctor said is, the original due date, we'd love to have them out of here by then. And I hung on to that date. I'm like, this is our deadline. We have a goal with the deadline. This is what we're going to get accomplished. And then as we're progressing closer and closer and closer, I was having a rough time with it. I'm like, well, they're still on oxygen. They're still doing this and all this and we were just questioning so many things. And we remember the nurses saying, like, at one point, it's just going to click, and they'll start doing the things they're supposed to do. They're going to start eating like the way they're supposed to. They're going to start behaving like the way they're supposed to. And as you get closer and closer to that time period, you're wondering, is this ever going to happen? Are they ever going to get it? And that was a big challenge for me, because I just couldn't physically see it. And then one day when it happened, it just clicked. All of a sudden our baby was eating so much better. Beckham was eating better, sleeping better, and doing all these things we wanted to do the prior 2 months. All of a sudden that was happening. It was such a relief for us. At this point too, you're also at the burnout phase, because you can see light at the end of the tunnel. You see the weight getting better. You see the eating getting better. And you're just like, we're so close. And then it's another day, and then another day. You may have a setback where it adds a couple more days. And this is a burnout time period where I'm like, I am tired of waking up and going to the hospital. I'm tired of watching them hooked up to all these machines. I'm getting tired of this. There's a phase where it just gets burned out. You're like, I'll just take them home with all these machines. Can we just go home and not be here anymore? And that burnout's a real thing. And that was a hard thing for us to go through. It was like, okay, we just got to keep trusting during this process that this burnout, yes, it's real. And yes, you want to be done with it, but we still have to trust God that his timing is right for every single situation.
Yeah, for sure. Like Jared was talking about with the, one day they'll just get it. I know in our situation, Beckham was having a really hard time tiring out during all of his feeds. So he wouldn't finish his full bottles, which obviously wasn't, then he wasn't gaining enough weight. And he also had issues with Brady's, or, the DSATs in the heart rate. And you have to go a certain, I think, 2 full days without that. So it's like he would make it a day, and then he'd have one, and then he'd make it, half a day, and then and the eating, I would be feeding him and nursing him, and he would just literally pass out, and I'd be like smacking his forehead, like, wake up, you got to eat, bro, I was just trying to do everything because, like Jared said, like we were so burnt out at this point. We just wanted to bring him home. A big thing for us was the oxygen. At towards the end, when we were getting close, they tried to take him off the oxygen, and he would fail the test every time. And I, in my heart, was so set on the fact that he was not going to come home on any oxygen, on anything like that. And you know, he did. He did end up coming home on oxygen, and that was hard for me because I didn't want him to come home attached to cords, but that was just the way that it was. And so we just had to, again, accept these things as they were, and just know that there was at least an end in sight. You know, I remember watching other families come in after we had been there for already a while, and then watching them go home, and just being like, when is it going to be our turn? And yeah, it's a hard part.
Yeah. And sometimes you sit there and you see a family come in after you and they leave before you, and you're just, it's almost like going to a restaurant and someone comes in after you and they get the seat for you, like, what's going on? Like, this is our turn. Well, how come this is not happening for us? And it was a tough part of it. We were happy for those families. At the same time, we were definitely jealous that they got a chance to take their baby home. And taking Beckham home, we had mixed emotions on it because we knew we were going home with oxygen. We actually he had to wear one of those little heart monitors too, and hooked up to, we had 2 machines, a big oxygen tank we're trying to carry out of there. There was a lot of stuff going on, and we had mixed emotions going home, but we were so happy to get home. That was a big thing. We knew if we got him home that he was going to be better because he's going to be in our care. Not that there's anything wrong with the nurses or the doctors, but we knew that him being home in a place that he's going to be loved on constantly, that was going to be a huge benefit in helping his growth.